Today's episode is Stop Informing, Start Influencing. Too often, we start with a data dump of information. For example, I was just on a call with a wonderful person from the Outlier Project helping a few people with their websites. And the majority of them had so much information on themselves, just too much information that was overwhelming. And to his point, people will tune out. Like my mentor, Donald Miller, always says, if you confuse, you lose. And if people have to burn too many calories to figure out what you're trying to say, they're going to move on and leave indifferent to you. And I don't want anybody to be indifferent to you. I want you to stand out so you can get what you want in life, so that you can be the leader that you've always been, but you're more visible, that people can say, oh my gosh, I want to work with her. She's amazing. And you can start winning more business deals, negotiating bigger contracts, as well as commanding larger salaries. So let's talk about these 6 tips. First things first, start if you're trying to influence. Let's just delve into this a little bit more. Too often what happens is we give so much information and we don't think about the audience. What matters to them? What do they care about? And so number 1 out of these 6 tips is to start with why it matters. And why does it matter to the audience? Why is this topic relevant to them? So often, just like in elevator pitches, we start talking about ourselves. I do this, I do that. And it is not about the other people. We have to remember that any message we deliver needs to be delivered in a way that the other party feels like, oh, this is relevant to me. And oh my gosh, this is really useful. I love this information because it matters to me. And a big way that we can do this is help people to bring people into a bigger conversation. So, for example, this reminds me of when I hosted a summit a number of years ago online. And I started by asking people, would you like to speak at my summit? Where it was all about me, my summit. And even I that teaches these things, or when I teach these things, I have to remember too, I have to look at who is my audience. So I just want to make the point that we're all human, right? And when I was asking people, it hit me a couple of times after asking, going, wait a second, this is all about me. I need to make it about them. So instead, I started saying, would you like to be a part of a movement empowering women? And they went, oh my gosh, tell me more. Like, who would say no to that? Or at least who wouldn't be intrigued to want to hear more? So we want to create this bigger picture around why this is relevant to them. And don't just explain what it is, but here's how it's going to matter. Here's where you give meaning to it. So when we can give meaning to something, then that creates, oh my gosh, this amazing interest in listening to more. Secondly, so first, start with why it matters. Second, lead with stories, not stats. Too often, what happens is we give a lot of numbers and information, but we don't explain it. And not that we want to have you explaining things too much, but we do want to make sure that there's something that engages, because facts tell, but stories sell. The more we can engage with our stories to help you be more memorable through those stories, and you will also be more magnetic and dynamic because we live by stories. We are engaged when we hear stories. So I want to give an example of this with a gentleman that I coached a while back. To his board of directors, he had to present every week. And he told me, Karen, I am not a numbers guy. I am not that person that gets up and tells these amazing stories. This is also, time out here, everybody, a myth. We have to, meaning the myth is that we often think that we have to be this amazing storyteller. And that is not true. You don't have to be an amazing storyteller. Sometimes it can simply be an example. When you start sharing things and you start what I like to call being a story spotter, looking for opportunities, look for stories in your day-to-day life where you go, oh, I could relate this back when I'm talking about this or when I'm giving this presentation. And so remembering that those stories really matter. So this guy, it was funny because I remember him saying, like, I'm just a numbers guy. I just get up there with my spreadsheet. And I said, well, let me ask you this. And I would ask you as a listener right now, the same thing. Do you want to influence or do you want to inform? And if you want to influence, keep listening. So we brainstormed. He said, okay, okay, okay. So I said, I know there's something that you could share. So let's brainstorm. What do you care about? What matters to you? And in his particular case, and with his particular audience, it worked with what he did because he goes, oh my gosh, I'm a total sports fan. What is the first thing that happens when you go into a sporting event? After you get your beer and popcorn, you look at the scoreboard. And he said, that's what I'm presenting to the board. It's a scoreboard on how the company is doing. And that was a great example of a story, an analogy. It takes people out of their heads with just the information. So, very similar to what I started with is also tip number two, no more data dumping. All of this, all these tips connect with each other because too much information is going to overwhelm and it's going to disconnect your audience. This is similar to what my friend Jason, who was helping with the websites on this call today, was saying that when there's too much information, if you see a paragraph, let's even imagine when the last email you got that was a paragraph long with more than two or three sentences, usually we tune out. We go, oh, I'll look at that later. And then what happens? Later never happens. So remembering to avoid the data dump as much as possible. Now, there's nothing wrong with stats if they are meaningful. So keep in mind, a lot of times people go, oh, I'm just going to give some stats, but we don't explain why they matter. 3% of something doesn't mean anything unless there's something behind it and you tell a story around the data. So that will give it soul, very similar to what Brene Brown talks about. I believe it's something around stories are just data with soul, something to the tune of that. Number four is to speak to emotion before logic. Emotion drives action. Learn how to tap into what people feel before you show them data. If there's any way that you can do that. So, for example, there was a woman years ago that I coached around a blood drive. She was asking people to donate blood. So, no secret what she was asking, but there wasn't any meaning in what she initially was asking before she started working with me and my team at the time. And it was, well, the question to her was, what's really compelling? Is it compelling to say donate blood? Not really. But what is compelling? What is the result of giving blood? The result is you could save someone's life. And if we want to take it to another level, you can be a hero because you saved someone's life. Wouldn't you want to feel that? So that's the reason why you should donate blood, or that's why we'd recommend it. So notice how there was meaning behind that. And if we can do that in any situation, because the research tells us that people buy on emotion and then they justify with fact. This is why I talk so much about how you come across through your facial expressions, your body language, hand gestures. All of these things create an impression for people as well as your voice and the way you carry yourself. This is all contributing to whether people decide very quickly if they trust you and if they think you're credible. So, do you come across with a balance of warmth and assertiveness? Warmth comes through primarily through your facial expression, but also in the tone of your voice. Assertiveness comes through as well in the tone of your voice. I mean, it's all connected, but that balance. And so many times I am working with women on their voice, specifically thinking about somebody recently who I was working with, an executive coaching client. And by the way, I have a couple of spots open for my executive coaching practice services if you're interested in that. We were working on her credibility. She spent way too much time with the upspeak at the end of her sentences, so it never sounded like she knew what she was talking about, even though she is a C-suite leader, and she sure as well does know what she's talking about, but she didn't come across that way. This is why it's so important to make sure that you are fully representing yourself in the best possible way. Number 5, invite participation. Ask questions. Get curious. That is a great way to start influencing because people want to know that they are seen and acknowledged and heard. Influence isn't one way. It's really about asking the right questions to draw people in because it also helps them to take ownership. So simple things like, how is this resonating for you? Tell me more about what you're hearing in this conversation or in this presentation. What's landing for you? That's one of my favorites. How is this landing for you? Any type of probing question that's open-ended will create more trust and engagement because people feel like you actually care about them. Now, you also have to pause long enough to let them speak because I've seen this a lot when in presentations that go wrong where we ask a question, how is this landing? And then we wait 1 second for them to respond. We need to give them more time to respond. We have to get comfortable with silence. Research tells us that it takes about 10 to 15 seconds after which you ask a question and an audience to think and then feel comfortable enough to say something. So keep in mind that there might be a few seconds that you will be waiting before you hear a response. But silence is super powerful. That pause is definitely an amazing thing to have. Number 6, end with a clear next step. Information informs, but influence inspires action, and we all want to inspire action. So things like knowing how to ask your audience for what you want to suggest they do next. So here's the next step. In the next week, spend 15 minutes journaling about this. Or by October 1st, make sure that you have a conversation with XYZ and email me, let me know how that goes. So making sure it's specific, measurable, and tangible, and or one of those three, specific, measurable, tangible. It needs to be something where you can check it off a box and say, yes, I did that. So for example, you don't want to say, go to the gym and work out more. Well, that's not measurable. But if I tell you, go to the gym and work out for 30 minutes on weights and 30 minutes on cardio and see how that helps you progress. Now, you could even dive further into action by saying, do 3 types of XYZ exercises in the weight room floor, and in cardio, spend 10 minutes on the rower, 15 minutes on the treadmill, and 10 minutes doing something else. But hopefully you get my point. Be as specific as possible. So when you put all of these together, you're going to influence so much more than inform your audiences. And we all want to be influenced. You want to make sure that people are drawn in by your message. They're invited into your talk, your story, your information by influencing. So let's recap. Number 1, start with why it matters. 2, lead with stories, not stats. 3, no more data dumping. 4, speak to emotion before logic. 5, invite participation. 6, end with a clear next step. When you do these things, you are going to be a much better influencer. So I really want to hear from you. Let me know how these tips go. Give it a try. In the next week or two, go out there and try one of these. The next presentation you have, but not even if you're not presenting on a regular basis, think about the next conversation. Do you know how many people I'm in conversation with, probably like you, that are casual acquaintances or even friends, where I'm listening to them going, what is your point? We have to get to the point up front. So remember, bluff from the US military, bottom line up front, whether that's when you're writing an email or whether that's when you're in conversation. Don't make your audience wonder, even if it's an audience of 1. Don't make them wonder what your point is as you're talking. All right, folks, thank you so much. It's great to hang out with you again, and let me know what questions you have. I also want to remind you that I have that free guide called 9 Words to Avoid and What to Say Instead if you'd like to hear those tips. That is in the show notes. If you loved today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. It helps other people find the podcast faster, and it certainly helps me. Remember, you too can stand out with unshakable confidence.